So with that, I'd like to welcome to the stage Aviv Shapira, Matteo Shapira, co-founders of Replay Technologies, and Gigi Levy, one of Israel's foremost angel investors and an investor in Replay, who will talk about their exit last year and their experience in building a global company.
So for those of you living in the United States, by the way, this is really already a very integral part of the way sport is broadcasted in the United States these days. Think about all the point of views that are opening here and being able to basically see a match from the eyes of a player or somebody sitting somewhere in the court. As I said, when I saw that and not believing that it's possible, I had to invest. So let's start. Aviv, why did you guys decide to start a sports tech company? I mean, this is not, when you guys started, that was not a very popular choice. And there were not many companies dealing at all with sports tech in Israel. What did you have in mind?
So, you know, when we decided to open a sports-based company, we didn't think about all of those challenges you're talking about because we had a vision, we had a dream. And maybe in order to understand why, we'll go a bit backwards into our history. Back in 2010, it all started in the UK, in London. Working for a UK company every day, you know, you finish your day in a pub, and after a lot of beers, this is where the magic happens. So, you know, we were watching a game. I think it was Arsenal versus Manchester United, and we saw this amazing goal, and we said, you know, I wish I can see this goal from the eyes of the goalie. And it was the craziest idea ever. You know, we thought about, you know, different solutions. And then my brother, which is the genius here between us two, came up with the idea of creating a virtual camera on a reconstructed field of play, which is basically what's behind the technology. And you know, this is how we started. 7 months afterwards, we were in the Olympics. And we didn't really think about the challenges. I think it was, you know, going with our passion. And like you said, you know, a lot of people tell you it's not going to work. Forget about it. We're not going to invest in you, or you're never going to be able to pull it off. The market is hard. The technology is very challenging. But you know, history has proven itself. So.
Yeah. So, Matteo, I want to ask you a little bit about the technology of the company. And just before that, I've got to share with you guys that my favorite ever quote about Replay of all times, you guys will remember it, one of the first ever Replay-enabled matches. And the two commentators are basically using this for the first time. And one of them is saying, and I'm watching this match because, you know, I want to see how the technology is used. And I'm proud that one of my companies is actually live on television in the United States. And one of them, they're like going ecstatic about it, about the opportunities it opens. And you'll remember one of them asked the other, do you know how they do that? And the other one, like the older guy, says, I don't know, but I heard it involves a really, really expensive camera that somebody's carrying around in real time. You remember a big camera? Yeah, he says, a really big and expensive camera that somebody's carrying around. So I want to hear a little bit about what are we doing, which is not really a big camera being carried around, and how we do that. But maybe moreover, when we started thinking about this technology, was it a technology that you invented for sports viewing, or was it something that was in your mind for multiple options, multiple verticals, and sport just happened to be the first one? How did you come to that? But let's start with just what is the core technology?
So that's an interesting question. Essentially, the technology is what we call volumetric video. Volumetric video is essentially, instead of capturing and playing back video in 2 dimensions, like we're all used to, basically every form of video we use on our smartphones, going to the movies, watching the news, etc. It's 2-dimensional videos. We actually record reality. Think of it like a giant 3D scanner. We record reality with full 3 dimensions, and we're able to then give any specific view for the consumer, for the director, etc.
Using how many cameras, and are these special cameras? I know the answer.
Yeah, technically we can use any camera. We chose machine vision cameras because of practical reasons, mostly cost, installation, the MTBF, etc. All the factors that you don't want to put a $50,000 sports camera static in a stadium. So we use machine vision cameras, specialized cameras, and the technology, to answer your question, the vision is that basically the entire world will transition to volumetric video. Movies are going to become interactive scenarios. Most types of content will be things that we can walk around with VR glasses or augmented reality glasses. So when we talk about this today, it kind of makes sense. Everybody knows what VR is, what kind of experience it gives us overall. But I think back in 2012, it was plain crazy to tell somebody we can generate a viewpoint, a perspective, for example, of what does the quarterback see without any physical camera on his head. It was a completely crazy idea. So sports has really been sort of a fertile ground to implement that. And essentially, it's a sort of a jumping board, stepping stone into the next challenges of implementing this technology.
But that technology was basically invented for that use case of sport, and then you started thinking about other places it can go to.
I think both. I mean, we invented the format in thinking about multiple application, but the bottom line was sort of delivering sports content, which I think was very good for us as a startup company, because we always had I think a big, let's call it, a big win behind us in terms of knowing that we're dealing with something that's even bigger than sports. Although sports is obviously big enough, but it really helped us with our passion.
Yeah. So what I really loved about the company, and one of the things that I think is really core for the Israeli industry when we think about sport technology, is that this was a real combination of real deep core technology, the way we know how to develop in Israel. Developing it with less engineers than anybody else in the world, and faster and better. And when I think about the kind of companies, the kind of sport technology companies that Israel could be a real expert in, is exactly these places where we can actually take the combination of real, intensive, complex problems and apply them to sports. Because when it comes to the more simple things or the more immediate things, Israel can succeed, and we can really have some great companies. But not necessarily this is for me our core competency is an Israeli ecosystem. And so I don't know if everybody knows this, but Replay right now is the center of Intel's vision for not just sports in general, but video at all, right? And so, Aviv, when was it that, I know when I felt that it's going to be big, when was it that you guys understood that you're onto something which is really huge, something which is bigger than just being something that's used in a match every once in a while?
So, when we started to pitch Replay to investors, We saw the technology that can change the way people consume sport. In terms of broadcasting, in terms of perhaps second screen at the time, at one point, I think it was 2013, Mark Zuckerberg got on a stage and said that they're buying a company called Oculus, and I want to show you a video while I speak. At that point in time, we understood that our technology, the same technology that we intended to use for broadcasting, is essentially one of the leading technologies in the world today to create content for VR. So what you see in front of you is a collaboration with Sony, and this is an interactive video. So the guy actually wearing the VR device can be anywhere he wants to in the field. He can be behind the quarterback. It can be like a sky cam above the field. You can freeze the action. You can go around, and this actually changed the entire business plan, the entire engineering plan. Everything was all based around VR. Suddenly we had a very big competitive advantage in the area of interactive video. So at that point, we understood that your microphone, I think, is echoing. At that point, we understood that we basically hold something very valuable and very big in the industry.
So I don't think everybody knows how complex sport technology is. I think that one of the points where I understood it was in one of the early board meetings when we were talking about who we need to talk to in order to be in one stadium. And it included the teams, it included the owners, it included the television network that's supposed to broadcast it, it included the union that takes care of everything which is installed in the stadium, and a bunch of other people, right? So it's a very complex environment. Could you share some of the real difficulties that are unique for sport technology companies and maybe are not that known to other people, the kind of thing that we faced and had to overcome?
So we had sort of a double challenge in the fact that the technology was, it didn't even have an ecosystem. It's not like we were solving a particular problem, like we were solving a particular need for the sports industry. We're coming on with something which is very unique, very spectacular. And the challenge was basically getting it in. And I think part of the ingenuity around, if you would call it the Israeli factor, and the way we've built the company, is because we've mixed people from not just the machine vision and the defense industry, but we also brought in people from, let's call it the more creative part of it, computer-generated imagery, visual effects, animation. We were able to sort of tailor-made the experience of how do we take something which has a lot of limitations. It takes, for example, 1 minute to generate a clip, and how do we actually tailor that for the broadcasters? So we had a lot of iterations on how to generate different type of products without falling in love with anything in particular.
Aviv, you want to add some more difficulties that are sport tech related?
Yeah, I also see it today in Intel. Sorry, I think monetization is a big one. How do you make money not for yourself but for your customers? Today the sports industry is very rigid. It's a lot of old school people who came from broadcasting, and the big transformation we have today around digitization and personalization of content is something which will take time, and this is one of the challenges today to get into the talk about the future, but also making money today. So it's one of the challenges I see in most of the companies here.
I want to add that one of the biggest challenges that I always thought the company is going to have is around fitting in the way the industry works, and specifically in Replay's case, I think one of the hacks that really worked well for the company was that instead of trying to sell technology to people that don't buy technology, or selling something that does not fit into their model, Replay came up with a brilliant idea of literally putting a team in the match on the ground that will deliver to the commentator, to the broadcaster, a video that they can use. So that the actual video from the commentator, from the broadcaster's perspective, didn't really change from anything else they used to have. Because they used to have the live video, and they used to have a video of showing themselves speaking, and they used to have a video of a replay, a normal replay. And suddenly they had this new video, which is a video that came in through the same places. They didn't know what was happening behind. And I think that one of the core hacks that made the company so successful was not trying to change the sports ecosystem, which is a really tough ecosystem, but actually find a way to align ourselves with the way this industry works so that nobody else needs to change and still they get the innovation, right?
Exactly. So, like my previous comment, I mean, giving broadcasters what we call two-dimensional clips and potentially in the future giving them interactive video is all based from our side on the same hardware, on the same infrastructure. But we find a way to monetize the technology in the present, but to give a potential for the future. So that was the key.
Yep, that was the key thing. So guys, going a bit more generic than sports tech, you guys have had a spectacular exit, and you basically built a technology that I think is going to be really material in the way we consume sports content in the future. Do you have like, you know, there's lots of entrepreneurs here in the audience. Do you have like any good one piece of advice each as to what is it that you think was one of the key things that made you guys so successful?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. There's actually a lot, but you know, it's a startup is a roller coaster, so you learn a lot on the way. You know, we're all here because we love sports in one way or another, either fans or investors or, you know, trying to deal with new technologies. And I think if I ask each and every one of you, what do you think the sports market will be like in 10 years? Each and every one of you will have an answer. And the truth is that none of you know. I don't know as well. And that brings me to the next point, which is we are the ones shaping the industry. So each and every one of you, you know, dealing with new technologies, and I saw some really cool stuff here. We are the one creating the next evolution of sports. And you know, along the way, a lot of people told us, like Gigi said, you know, it's not going to work. The industry is not going to accept it. It's going to take you years. And my advice here is, you know, you need to take those feedbacks, embrace them, and move on. You know, learn from those experiences, and just, you know, make your impact, because this is exactly what happened with Replay. And each and every one of you can just shape the way the sport is going to be. And you're going to get a lot of no's along the way. We just need to learn how to deal with them.
And I think I would actually take your point and elaborate on it. When developing both technology and derived products from it, we need to always, you know, be humble towards this very big, very complicated, very dynamic ecosystem of sports, which is also tied to other, let's call it media-related ecosystems. For example, what we've discussed with virtual reality and augmented reality, there's a sort of, they feed off each other. So I would say that when we reach tough spots, when we think our product may have problems with either the technology, penetration, business model, etc., especially as a startup, we need to be nimble and agile to remember that there's always a different possibility. I think one of our biggest points after a very, very successful Olympics project, our first big project was the 2012 Olympics, which was highly successful, and we sort of crowned it as the first time the world is showing a replay with volumetric video. But in terms of the ecosystem, nobody really noticed. We thought that clients would be knocking down our doors, and they weren't. So that was sort of a very low point for the company. And at that point, we realized not only that we have to be very agile with our product definitions and what it is we're actually doing, but also never to spread all the eggs in one place. So that's why we chose to collaborate with, on the consumer side, for example, with Sony, with Intel, with Samsung, and on the league side, not to be bound to a particular league, not just to work, for example, with the NBA. We always made it a point that we have some sort of fail-safe mechanism. So if the relationship, for example, with MLB doesn't come to fruition, it doesn't destroy the company. So that was a very big lesson that we've learned from the experience.
So guys, let's finish with something exciting. I think everybody sitting here loves sports and loves watching sports. And despite everything that's happening, I still watch my favorite team, usually on my television, maybe with a replay somewhere, with a 3D replay somewhere. But in general, nothing has changed ever since, I was a kid. Televisions are slightly better. How do you think I'm going to watch my favorite matches 10 years from now? What do you think, like, go wild from you're sitting now in the center of the world, in the company that's going to define a big part of it. How is that going to be? What's going to happen? Give me, like, the vision.
So the vision in a nutshell is that sports viewing is going to become very personalized. It's not going to be this static feed that we're all watching. Basically, when there is a big match, there are very few type of feeds. Everybody sees the same thing. So personalization is going to be a very big factor. Afterwards, there's immersiveness, which I think this is where 3D comes in, the ability to be inside the game. So some people would prefer to, for example, watch a soccer game where they're around Messi for the entire game. They literally walk beside him with a VR headset and experience what he experiences as part of the game. And I think the third aspect, which is very big, is sociability, digital sociability. So right now, watching sports is socially fun when we have friends around us, but the direction where it's going is that the more we can digitally enable people to experience a more, let's call it the way I see the story of what's going on, the more that's going to essentially enrich the game. Beyond what is right now, which is, I can tweet to my friends, I can,
So you're saying that I'm going to get my chance of feeling like a top footballer despite not being the best as a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Aviv, do you want to add something?
Yeah, maybe to add something. So first of all, we see our technology as the future, if you ask. But I think, as we progress in our life, there's less and less time for sports. You don't see a lot of people watching like a full baseball game today or a full basketball game. Content needs to be faster. It needs to be more effective. It needs to be in the right place, in the right time. And this is part of the solution here. How do you deliver content effectively for the users? And this is part of the big personalization change that we're experiencing. One of the companies I saw here, which I already know from the past, WSC, is doing exactly that. Giving the right content to the right people at the right time.
Yeah. So guys, there's an exciting future. I want to sum up and say that Replay for me was an amazing proof that out of Israel can really come the most disruptive technology companies when it comes to a field that is so, under the spotlight of everybody else. Meaning, it's a tough field. It requires a lot of business development, and still, using the core tech capabilities that we have in Israel, we created, the guys created an amazing company that's literally changing the way sports is consumed. I'm really happy that iAngels have arranged this event, because I think this could be one of the top areas where Israel is going to excel using top technologies in the coming few years. So, Aviv and Matteo, thank you. Thank you for the journey, and thank you for the panel.
Thank you for investing.